Hello students, hope you are doing well. This is going to be our first lecture on World War I, and I have given you a couple different options that you can take notes as you go through the presentation. I do want you to put the presentation in presentation mode so that it plays all the video clips that you need to listen to as you go to each slide. The top I have, here is a link to the optional Cornell Notes pages, so you could either open that in your Google account. If you prefer to have a graphic organizer, you could use that to take notes. Both of these options, you can open them and fill them out as you go along with the presentation by typing in your answers, or if you want to print them off and fill in the blanks, you can do that. You can also just take notes on your own notebook paper. The notes are only going to help you to better understand the lecture. You're not going to be graded on completing the notes, but there is a place in the gradebook for you to upload a copy of your notes. On the next slide, I have given you 3 images of these options. Also, if you are going to just print them off and fill in the blanks, make sure that you are reading the questions and reading what you are writing down for answers. You want it to make sense. You should be able to answer the essential question and the I can statements for this unit. I've also included a link to the Quizlet for this unit, but that's also in your Schoology page. So for the essential question, what were the causes of World War I? And the I can statements, or I can explain how militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism caused World War I, and you should be able to identify the event that started World War I. So what you're going to do is you're going to open up this in presentation mode. This will make the video links and clips work. Take notes as you listen, and then when you are finished, you're going to go back into Schoology and complete the section 1 reading and questions. And then there'll be a short check quiz that you can take. Here we go. All right, so what 4 tensions or factors led to the outbreak of war in Europe? So there's actually 4 main underlying causes or tensions. And these 4 things spell out the word main. So it's pretty convenient or easy to remember. The first tension or cause of war in Europe was militarism. Militarism is the policy of making your military larger. So just like the United States had done in the previous unit during imperialism, we made a huge military. We had the Great White Fleet with the Navy. And so it's the idea that the strong countries or the world powers are racing to have the biggest military. And as soon as one person gets a new battleship, then the other country wants to have something just like that. It's kind of like a little rivalry or competition. And so this is kind of putting pressure on the different countries, especially in Europe. The other thing that is part of militarism is the countries building up their actual army or their military. And they would do this depending on the type of country they had, either by recruiting people to join the military or by using what's called a draft or conscription. And draft and conscription are just fancy words for when the government actually forces you to serve in the military. The United States currently doesn't need to have a draft because we have an all-volunteer military. If we ever ran out of people volunteering to join the military, then the United States Congress would have to enact a draft in order to get people to join the military. The second thing that led to war in Europe is alliances. And so this is where different countries are making agreements with each other saying, if somebody attacks me, will you have my back? And so this would just be like if you were on social media and your best friend saw that somebody else made a comment or said something bad about you or something that was not true, you would expect your ally or your friend to come and have your back. And so this was the same type of thing. And so the way that alliances led to war in Europe is that if 2 different countries get into a disagreement, then their allies get involved, and then a dispute between 2 turns into a dispute between 4, and so on and so forth. So a dispute would involve the other countries or the allies. And I want you to be thinking, who would you consider to be your ally or your number one ally? So pre-war alliances, this is before the actual Great War starts. So there was the Triple Alliance, which is also known as the Central Powers, and this included Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. And further on in the presentation, when I point out these Central Powers, you'll notice that they are in the center of Europe, so it makes sense. The other alliance was referred to as the Triple Entente. Entente is another word for an alliance. These were also known as the Allied forces. So this would be Great Britain one, France the second one, and then Russia would be the third one. So imagine if you lived out in the country and you had lots of land around your house. And then you started getting messages that someone was planning on spreading onto your land to take it as their own. And that someone was also willing to use force if necessary to get your land. Thinking about what you would do, I would hope that you would want to defend your land, maybe build up your military, or maybe get a security system. You want to do something that is going to protect you. And maybe you'd also maybe tell a neighbor to watch out for you and if something happened. So that's kind of something similar to what was happening in Europe. The third tension is called imperialism. Imperialism is the unit that we just finished. So the idea of taking over other people's land. And so some examples from U.S. history would be when we took over Hawaii or Guam. The fact that the United States used to be 13 colonies, the British had practiced imperialism. That's why they had control of the colonies. And so different world powers, big countries, just like the United States, are competing for power and control, trying to take over other places, especially to try to get a hold of their natural resources. And since there's very few areas of land left to actually take over, there's also, besides a race for military, a race to take over and control these resources. And some of the resources that are from back then and even today would be natural resource such as oil. It could be a forest, could be something just as like a warmer climate so that you can have certain types of crops, kind of like how the United States did in Hawaii for the sugar plantations. And then the fourth thing is called nationalism. Nationalism is when you have a really strong loyalty to your own ethnicity or your ethnic group. So if you are Polish, you are going to want to be around other Polish people, and you don't want to be ruled by somebody else. And so these ethnic groups, if somebody took over your country and then forced their way of life on you, you would maybe want to be independent. So it's the idea of ethnic groups wanting to break away and form an independent country of their own. Being able to rule yourselves. And these four things ended up creating mistrust amongst different nations.